All right, sweet. Am I audible? Great. I'm happy to affirm the resolution that CallOut should not allow everyone to debate on its platform for the basic reason that any private business, especially that hosts this competition, should have a level, should have a certain terms of service that people should agree to. Now, I'm going to give you a few reasons why CallOut's terms of service are reasonable. But the key point about this resolution I want to make is the word everyone. My argument is not that CallOut should just arbitrarily pick people and just throw them out of the league. That would be ineffective for CallOut and for any other business ever. What I'm saying, though, is that not everyone should be allowed to compete because there are certain standards that people should adhere to. The first argument is that it is inherently reasonable. CallOut is a private business, and as such, it has a right to maintain its own terms of service and set its own rules. So CallOut, as it's not like a public institution that can be held responsible for free speech violations or do anything illegal, it is simply a business that is offering other people good stuff, the opportunity to communicate. So it has a right to set its rules. The second thing is this is a legitimate way to maintain public discourse. CallOut should distinguish itself from YouTube comment sections that are often full of really entrenched racism, abusive rhetoric, pretty much whatever people want to say. CallOut is supposed to be a much more distinguished level of public discourse, and that requires some rules. My third main argument is that this is a real world standard. Even if you don't like CallOut's terms of service, the fact is this is the way that virtually every other social media network, virtually every other business will operate, that you can't get away with saying racist, abusive, sexist things. You can't get away with cheating. You can't get away with sexual harassment. All of that stuff that CallOut is saying you can't do on our site is stuff that other institutions will do. So it makes the most sense to have an institution that's going to be preparing you for the rest of your real world interaction, especially that in public discourse. For those of you that are familiar, this is from section 6.7 of CallOut's terms of service. By the way, shout outs to CallOut's terms of service for being the first terms of service that I've ever read. We all hit the check and just walk away. But the summation of it in point 6.7, it goes through like Roman numeral like 12, and I'm obviously not going to read them all out, but it basically summarizes and says that people, can be removed if they use abusive or harmful language, they use harassment, they use spamming, fraudulent posting, they steal content illegally, they are sexually exploitive, they use illicit commercial activities like pyramid schemes. LOL. I'd like to see someone try that on CallOut, but you get the idea. CallOut should have some reasonable restrictions on who can compete. It's not fascism, it's not tyranny, and it's not a violation of free speech. It's just called having a reasonable institution where we have some rules on how you can behave.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic first argument. I'm looking forward to this debate. I'm going to be explaining why CallOut needs to be open for everyone, and everyone being very broad and open-ended for two main reasons. First and foremost, not only is not allowing everyone to debate, it makes CallOut redundant, in fact, useless if you really look at it. CallOut's explicit point, if you go to the CallOut about section or there on us or the / on bullshit, the point of CallOut is incredibly clear, and that is to burst the echo chambers that we all fall into. It's talking about you, it's talking about me, it's talking about everyone on CallOut, including someone who's being a bit of a dick, maybe a bit abusive, maybe whatever. So if we're talking about someone who's being kind of overly aggressive, being mean, even swearing a little bit, that person has the right to have their echo chamber burst just like every single other person. And there are ways that we can deal with people who don't want to deal with someone who's aggressive or abusive that I'll get into a little bit later. But my second main point is that we need growth right now to CallOut more than ever. See, if you look at CallOut's Facebook group, you have 549 members. That's not a very big group, especially for a website that has as much traffic as we do. But when you break down the traffic and you really look at the specifics, you see something very interesting. In the last week, there have been 26 debates. 26 debates. That's a very important number, and that's about how many on average, with decreasing as you go farther and back by about 2 per week when you get about a month back. So last month, there were about 24 per week. Before that, it was 22, so on and so forth. I counted these. Go check it. Important stuff. Because what's important, though, is that we see booms and busts in the CallOut cycle. When you have CallOut with a tournament, you see more people in competing. So you have more people who are debating, more content on the site. But when you see between the 4th round and the 1st round of a second debate, a debate tournament, you see a slump. This is burnout. This is the same exact thing that happens when you have a gym membership and you go only during right after the holidays when you've made your New Year's resolution, and you have that little bump in gym membership over right before summer break where people are trying to lose weight. This is the exact same thing that happens to basically all websites that are heavy in New Year's resolution type things. Khan Academy has the same problem when it comes to traffic onto their website, because they have away from midterms and away from finals. When it's away from these two very important things, people don't use them. Now, I'm going to go back into that and explain more as the debate goes on, but I want to really bring up a super important aspect of this argument. The resolution says debate. If you are being nothing but abusive, if you are just going on and I just start, if I, for instance, stopped debating and just started screaming the N-word over and over again, I wouldn't be debating anymore, and that would not be covered under this resolution. So it is super important to remember that we are talking about debate and debate only, not pyramid schemes, not Ponzi schemes, not anything like that, which means that we do.
Hey, is it possible to use the N-word in a debate round?
I certainly would hope not, but is it allowable? I'm sorry, what's your question? Is it allowable, or should you? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to do charades for Pass the Mic. That was hard. Is it possible to use the N-word in a round?
I am not familiar with the terms of services in that way, but I do know that probably I'm assuming that if you were saying the N-word as a in a more sterile way, when you're talking about the concept, perhaps I'm not 100% sure.
Are you familiar with the term ad hominem?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's make a big res analysis, just an observation about the resolution. My opponent basically tries to weed out of the entire case of pro by saying, by the way, the resolution doesn't apply to people that are being oafs or bad because those people aren't debating. Well, that's not true at all. You can use abusive rhetoric in a debate. You can use the N-word in a debate. You can use an innumerable number of ad hominems, abusive rhetoric stuff that should disqualify people from competition in a debate. So, of course, the resolution applies to people that are being abusive. They would not be allowed to debate. Whether that offense came in a debate round, before debate round, or after debate round, we're simply saying they would be removed from call-out per its terms of service. They would no longer be allowed to compete. So if my opponent comes up and says, by the way, the resolution doesn't apply to bad people, that's not true. You can say bad things in a debate round. That doesn't make it not a debate. It just means you're a bad debater. And you're also a bad person. And so call-out should probably remove you because you're not promoting civil discourse. Okay, let's get down to his two arguments. Outside of the fact that my opponent isn't actually making an argument that refutes the rest. Like, he's saying call-out shouldn't generically remove people or just arbitrarily throw people away from the system because that'd be bad for their business. My opponent isn't making an argument that literally everyone should be on, which is the wording of the resolution. He's conceding arguments about how harmful rhetoric, people who use harmful rhetoric shouldn't be allowed. He's conceding arguments about people who are abusive or are exploitive, or even people who spam or cheat. Like, those kinds of people shouldn't be allowed to compete. So that to have this kind of discussion about, how can we make CallOut grow and be a good business? But the resolution is kind of an afterthought at the moment we engage with the case of the con. So his first argument is CallOut is useless. In other words, like, CallOut's useless. It's just a meaningless echo chamber if we don't get these people off. Okay, my response is civil discourse versus abusive rhetoric. Echo chambers are when people are afraid of ideas contrary to them, not when they don't appreciate being sexually harassed or verbally abused. So CallOut, as its mission to destroy echo chambers, does a good job when it's promoting civil discourse, not when it's allowing literally anyone under the sun saying, doing, or mentioning anything to be a part of it. In other words, you better maintain the mission statement of CallOut when you vote pro, because you are ensuring that there is civil discourse. Not that there's ideological fascism either. Not that we're just closing out people who appear more left and right than the other, but when we're actually promoting civil discourse by removing the people that are seeking to destroy it. So you have to limit who can compete if you want to have a good ideological discussion and not abuse. The second argument is CallOut needs growth. My response is misidentified problem. Look, because it doesn't allow people who, sexually harass others to comment on its web stream. That's not why CallOut's suffering from growth. So let's identify, let's not pretend as if CallOut eliminating its terms of service is going to fix the problem of growth. No. We need bigger growth and more popularity from people that are just learning about it. And that's the solution to make CallOut grow, not just to eliminate and allow anyone to compete under any reason.
So I do think it's interesting when my opponent asked me about the ad hominem logical fallacy, because what he did was his entire argument was a series of straw men. I'm going to point to them specifically, and I hope you remember them throughout the argument. First and foremost, he says, I'm advocating for the complete destruction of terms and services, which will lead to some sort of anarcho wasteland of horrible harassment and debate. Well, that's not actually true. If you remember what I said, what I was saying specifically was essentially that if someone is being, in the things he brought up, doing the things he brought up, specifically if all he's doing is saying the N-word, all he's doing is being abusive, all he's doing is as a debater is, or as a contestant, as someone who gets the mic, is being like throwing violence and not making arguments, that isn't a debate by the definition of debate. If my opponent also brought up pyramid schemes, well, that is by no definition of the word a debate. So if you are trying to get people to enter into a pyramid scheme while you are in debate with them, or while you're on this not in debate with them, obviously, but while you're in this forum, you're not debating. So under no definition of the word debate does these violations of terms and services be relevant today. Now, my opponent also brought up that it was, let's see, that I conceded arguments about abuse, but again, this is not true. You can be a bit abusive. I have been abused constantly in debates. It happens. People get overheated. People throw mean, nasty names at each other. Does that mean they should be immediately taken out? No. Okay, what if they're abusers? Well, that's a bit of a different question, and maybe he'll talk about it a little bit. But if I accidentally called my opponent a name, should I be taken out? I certainly don't think so. If I just kind of was mean a little bit or overly aggressive, should I be taken out? No, I don't think so. What we need to talk about, though, is who should be taken out. Now, I'm going to say, again, no one, because people who are overly abusive, people who are overly aggressive, people who are sexually harassing or all that can be helped. I'm going to name a couple of big examples. First and foremost is Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is a black man who has saved 200 Klansmen from the KKK by dialogue with them. Yes, he got abused. Yes, he took insults. Yes, he got death threats, but he saved 200 people by bursting their echo chambers, even though they were abusive. That, just because they're abusive, does not mean they cannot be saved, and does not mean there's a huge social good in saving them. Now, I'm also going to point you to the recent interview by, what was his name? I think it was Michael Young. Michael Young's a black British interviewer who figuratively wiped the floor with Richard Spencer in an interview. The thing went viral. It was huge. It is all over news sites. That would be if something like that happened, where a white supremacist, a white nationalist, a racist, someone awful was just trashed in a debate by someone like my opponent, someone like Siegfried, any one of our incredible debaters, it would be great.
Let me just understand your position. You're saying if someone like consistently sexually harasses another user on this site, the solution is for other members of this site to start having, I don't know, 45-minute open chat dialogues and become their friend?
There are any number of ways we could fix that problem. We could restrict a person's accounts, and similar to the way YouTube does, by allowing them to debate with people who understand the risks of debating with them and are still, and this way, this solution would allow these people to continue having their echo chambers bursted while at the same time maintaining their presence on the site. So if they're sexually harassing someone, maybe don't put them with the person they're harassing. Maybe only put them with people who understand the risks of debating with them and allow them to continue. This might not be a perfect solution, but it is far better than taking away any chance that our website, our community has of helping this person get better.
So my opponent is essentially saying that the solution for all bad behavior online can be solved without removing them. Okay. Even if there were some ways to mitigate someone's bad behavior, the site QallOut is justified in removing people that practice illicit, illegal, and unethical behavior from their site. The first overarching reason is that QallOut is a private business. QallOut doesn't need to pander to people that are okay with being total assholes to others. They are perfectly justified in kicking people off that are literally abusing other people. And my opponent's like easy solution of, well, yeah, no, we should still make it easy for sexual abusers. We should just only allow them to debate other people that are okay with debating others that sexually harass. Like that's such a weird way to baby people that are doing wrong things. No, if someone's doing really bad behavior, they need to understand. If someone's doing this kind of bad behavior, they need to understand the solution is not to baby them. It's not to simply offer them a pacifier and say, well, you can just debate with these folks. It's to remove them from the site. Second, there are other examples. I mean, my opponent is trying to water this down and say, well, there might be some way that we could mitigate the problem. But there are no doubt examples of where someone should absolutely be removed. Like if someone is consistently using hateful and violent rhetoric towards other people or threatening the lives of other people in a debate round, that's not appropriate and doesn't deserve a place. So, I mean, we can debate about these like tiny little scenarios about, well, do we really kick this one off here? Do we really not kick this person off here? And we can debate about, when we cross that line, but the resolution isn't asking, when we cross the line. It's asking, should we ever cross the line for someone? By saying we should not allow everyone, we're saying there are behaviors and there are individuals that should be removed from the site. People who cheat, people who violently harass other people should not be allowed to debate. And an echo chamber applies to ideas, not to harassment. So if you harass other people, you don't get to stay on a site and get to earn free money against other people. No. You're a bad person. You should be punished legally because sexual harassment is not okay. And you should be isolated from the community because QallOut doesn't want to foster those kinds of people. No other business in their right mind would either. Okay, so let's go down to his other arguments. He said he keeps coming back to this argument and saying, well, if the people are using the N-word frequently, then they're not debating. Okay. Let's back up. First, they don't have to be debating for the resolution to be true. You can commit an offense after you log on to the site. You can start to harass other users before you've begun a debate. QallOut can still prevent you from debating. Saying QallOut should not allow everyone to debate is a restriction on the person's ability to compete. You can restrict that because of what they did in a round, before a round, or after a round. So any argument on pyramid schemes, any argument on this, well, they weren't debating, so somehow this example couldn't possibly apply, doesn't make any sense. Here's the point. My opponent isn't making an argument about why all people should be allowed to compete. He's trying to find some marginal example where we could improve someone's behavior and maybe persuade them to be nice. But the truth is, people who promote violent speech, and I think it's the easiest example.
All right. So again, several straw men I want to point out. First and foremost, he keeps going back to this idea of a complete elimination of terms and services. I never in the entire debate round said anything about that. Second, he says that I'm saying that we should baby these people. No, we should trash them. You are a perfectly capable debater. If we put you in a round with your rhetorical wit against a troglodyte, low IQ, sexist, racist, homophobe, you'd wipe the floor with them. And I would enjoy watching it, and so would a huge amount of our community in the process. Now, if you wanted to do it, you should be allowed to. If you wanted to trash this person, you should be allowed to. And now you also said that I haven't brought up any real reasons as to why we need to allow everyone on. But I brought up two main reasons. First and foremost, by not allowing everyone, by allowing someone, by kicking someone off who's being sexist, by being racist, what have you, we are taking someone, racism is an ideology, sexism is an ideology, and we are pushing them out of our little echo chamber. We are pushing them out of our what's okay to say, what's not okay to say. If harassment, anger, hatreds to a specific group, all ideologies, all belief systems, if we push those out simply because they're being expressed, we are creating our own echo chamber, and that is destructive and completely contradictory to the entire point of QallOut. Now, my opponent also says that, a few other things. He says that back to the point on me not bringing anything up, I brought up several things. I also brought up the fact that QallOut needs growth. If we want to be a big community that busts echo chamber, we need huge growth right now consistently. The burnout principle and where people stop coming in and stop coming to the gym is the exact same thing that happens with QallOut, as I showed with the gaps between tournaments, with that slowdown between tournaments. More information on that, in fact. If you look at the debates, debate rounds, in the last week, you have 26 debates. 17 of them were tournament debates. That means 17 debates that happened most of them were because someone was incentivizing them with cash. Of the debates that were not debates based on the rounds, over half of them, 4, were done by resident debaters, people who are already interested in debates, and 2 were done by individuals who had repeated a debate, who had debated for money and wanted to debate again. So if we want to really fulfill our goal of busting the echo chamber, we need a lot more people now, and we cannot afford to be kicking people off for saying mean things, being hurtful, etc., etc. Now, my opponent also says, well, what if they're doing a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme or whatever outside of the debate? Okay, then restrict their ability to communicate, restrict their ability to message people, restrict their ability to comment, stop them from doing the destructive action, but in the same way, burst their echo chamber with the incredible ideas and intellects that are here present on the site.
How would allow people to compete that reject their terms of service?
A very good question. If their terms of service, it's a good question. Let me think about that for a second. QallOut should not have a terms of service that allows for harassing behavior post facto onto the site. but that's just basic legality stuff. If you break the law, you shouldn't be allowed, you should be allowed to continue to debate, but you shouldn't be allowed to break the law on the website. Now, if you're breaking the law on the website, then you're obviously not debating, or if you're doing it in a debate round, you're obviously not debating, you're breaking the law. So if I started threatening your life right now, that's against the law. That's not a debate style, that's me being an ass. Pardon my language. If I try and get you to sign up for a pyramid scheme, that's not a debate style, that's me being awful. So there is no real there's no necessity to have a ultra restrictive terms of service that stops people from debating. We should allow everyone to debate.
Asking about what's in the terms of service. I'm saying, should people who reject the terms of service be allowed to compete?
I'm sorry, can you expand on that a little bit?
So both you and I have already agreed that there should be a terms of service, as we both said. I'm not asking what's in. I'm asking, if someone rejects whatever terms of service, should they be allowed to compete?
Yeah, I don't see why not. There's plenty of different ways that could be done. One, they could be tagged as a person who has not as an unsafe individual with the tagging system I recommended earlier. Hashtags, like the ones that will appear in our debate, can be put on that, or titles in their debate challenge on unsafe, not safe for work, similar to how we censor our content on YouTube, Facebook. All of these things can be applied here. There's no real big deal as to why someone will have to sign up for their terms and services, but they should still be able to access the echo chamber, or get their echo chamber challenge consistently.
I can't think of a better way to grow QallOut than to allow people who patently reject any form of restriction on their behavior on QallOut to participate. And moreover, to let everyone know, hey, by the way, we've gone from having restrictions on what you can do to having, rules and stuff like that, to just allowing whoever the heck wants to join to be on. And don't worry, we'll tag them. We'll make sure that you're around a bunch of people that could threaten you, spam you, steal your identity, instigate a pyramid scheme on our website, deceive you, steal your private information, etc. But, I feel like this would be the best way to grow the site. Like, this is literally the argument my opponent's leaving you with. He's saying QallOut's struggling with growth and is linking that to, well, we need to eliminate restrictions on abusers and allow them to come in and compete. So, okay, everything on the business model gets destroyed here. Why aren't other businesses doing this if this is such a good model for growth? Why does literally not only every business, but virtually every single social media site have some sort of restriction on what you can do within their private business? The two key responses are, first, utterly reasonable. QallOut has the right to decide this. The fact that they have a terms of service that rules how their private business functions is a reason to vote for the pro, because it is their right to decide. It is what they've already put forward. But the second thing is, this is literally how all businesses function. If it were actually better to just allow these like troglodytes of society to walk in and just abuse whoever the heck they want and hope that our voices drown out theirs, we would see other businesses doing it. So my opponent is not actually making a business argument. He doesn't understand how to make QallOut get better. It's not by just allowing people that abuse others to show. Second thing, he says, well, there should be a terms of service. Okay. On the terms of service, the first thing is, my opponent's saying, yes, people who reject the terms of service should be allowed to compete, makes no bloody sense. The terms of service are the terms that you have to agree to participate. It's like saying, yes, you can have a contract without any paper or pen or agreement. A contract is literally predicated on a level of agreement, on signing your name. So my opponent literally saying, yeah, they should be allowed to reject the terms of service. That's not a term then. It's not a condition. It has nothing to do with participating on QallOut. And the terms of service, get this, are meaningless if you say that people can reject them. But the second thing is, if you're going to actually enforce terms of service, then you're still going to vote pro, because that means there are restrictions and thus people who cannot compete on QallOut. All right. Third, he says, well, the solution to abusers is to beat them up in competition. My response is extra competitive issue. An issue where someone is abusing others actually causes real harm to them, not just a thing that we annoy. Like, we all know that one debater on QallOut. I'm not saying one particular, but just someone that maybe gets on our nerves and we like to debate them and be more aggressive. That's one thing. But when people are actually abusing others, harming them, I mean, do I need to read another bullying and suicide statistic for us to take this seriously? When that kind of stuff is happening, QallOut saying, yeah, we'll just let them compete. We'll just beat them really bad. That'll be the solution. No, that kind of behavior is inappropriate, and QallOut should distinguish that from simply another debater they don't like.
Okay, so again, we're having a lot of serious drama. And my opponent, again, I want to point you back to the resolution. Should not allow them to debate. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean not allow them to communicate. We could do that. I think that's great. That'd be a great way of dealing with someone. It's taking away their ability to private message people. Not allowed to vote. Okay, perfect. If they're consistently voting against someone and trying to destroy that person's chances of winning, that person shouldn't be able to take away their right to vote in the debates. If they're constantly commenting derogatory, horrific Ponzi scheme, et cetera, things, take that away from them. But all call out is at the very basic model, and all that is relevant to this debate is what my opponent and I are doing right now, right here. Now, my opponent missed several big things. And first and foremost, and most importantly, is people like Daryl Davis, who completely took 200 Klansmen and fixed them, helped them see the fact he was a person by talking to him, by having a decent conversation that probably did start out with huge amounts of abuse, huge amounts of threats, et cetera, et cetera. He's dealing with horrible people, and he helped them, and the social benefit cannot be underplayed. So perfect. We're putting that off as a win because my opponent did not attack it. He didn't touch it. He didn't even talk to it. Same thing with Gary Young, the guy who wiped the floor with Richard Spencer. We're putting that over because my opponent didn't refute it, and as such, that goes to the end of the round. And finally, my opponent says that there's all these horrible things that'll come if we have this kind of pseudo-voluntary system of dealing with call-out. But that's not necessarily true. There are so many ways that we can deal with call-out other than banning people who we disagree with, or banning people who have these bad habits, insult people, are overly aggressive, etc. We can put them in a two-tiered system. We can put them away from the rest of our debaters so they do not harass them and are all in this kind of little group where they have the chance and where someone like you or me can go in and trash them in a debate. We can have people go in and monitor these things. We have judges for a reason. We have the whole terms of service reporting program for a reason. So if we want to stop these people from being harassing, we can censor them from the main part of the platform into a private part while still having the benefits of bursting their echo chambers by fighting their sexism, another point my opponent didn't agree, their racism, another point my opponent didn't address, their homophobia, another point my opponent didn't address. So at the end of the debate, I think I won this debate because I'm showing the best good for the largest, for not only call out by making it more prone to growth, points my opponent didn't assault, and by allowing it to continue to function as it's supposed to by continuing to burst echo chambers, even for the people who deserve it the most vile in our society. Again, pyramid schemes, not debating, just saying the N-word, not debating. I think at the end of the day, I win.
A question, why do you feel like we should take away their ability to comment?
If you are being overly abusive, or if you're doing the Ponzi schemes type stuff, et cetera, then yeah, we have methods of taking away your access to that without stopping.
Okay, just follow my opponent's logical implication here. He's okay with taking away private messaging as well as commenting, meaning he's okay with taking literally 2 of the 3 ways of communicating out, but for some reason, he feels like you should be allowed to have a platform for 15 minutes to talk about your opinions, regardless of whatever they are. Like, if you want to be violent, by all means, go for it. I mean, that's why we have the debate there to begin with, right? There's no real argument here. I mean, he's gotten, like, razor thin close to just dropping the res and saying, yes, they shouldn't be allowed to debate. He's tried to subtract literally every other element from it, and we're left with this big question of why? If it's not a problem for them to be on the site when they're abusing, if it's not a problem for them to be there when they're using violent rhetoric, why would we take away those things too? It makes no sense. Okay, so let's step down. I already responded to his issue, like his Gary example. Things like socially, I actually super agree with my opponent that the way to deal with racism and unhealthy attitudes is actually to befriend and show compassion. So I'm actually with my opponent socially here. The problem is, in a competitive environment, when you are part of a private business and you are literally harming other people, the goal should be to remove that person who's harming others as soon as possible. Not only does that just show a basic level of respect for the people that person has harmed or abused, it's also a liability for other people. QallOut isn't going to do well as a business when people are looking at it and saying, yeah, one of the few sites on the internet where you can intentionally do stuff that is illegal and the site will just put a little tag next to your name saying illegal guy 101. I mean, if that's the business model my opponent supports, not only is it going to train wreck the business, it's just going to show everyone that QallOut isn't supporting the thing that it stands for, which is civil discourse. So let's look down at the voting issues. Echo chambers versus civil discourse. My opponent keeps saying that echo chambers need to be shattered here. I agree more. I could not possibly agree more. But you do not allow echo chambers to be destroyed by allowing people who discourage civil discourse, who discourage the idea of a calm discussion, and instead who want to raise their voices, like curse at others, use violent rhetoric, threaten others. That's not the solution for blowing up people's bubbles. The second thing is backwards business. My opponent is suggesting that QallOut do the opposite of what every other institution has and allow violent abusers to be there and just with a little tag next to their name. That's an insult to the people that have already been harmed and that could be harmed in the future and will turn people away. The third thing is most reasonable. Look, literally every other argument my opponent has made is predicated on the fact that there are some terms of service. At the moment he says, yeah, they can reject the terms of service and not be there, he's failing to understand that QallOut needs some limitations on who can compete.